I can't tell you what the salary of Mr. Barrow was. I would have to go and research that.
Hmm.
I also would have to ask the question um, about relativities. My first salary, and this is for Thierry, in 1974, I was earning less than $200 a month as a clerical officer. But, as I said, I don't know what the relativities are because that is what you would have to look at. What was the salary paid to those politicians and workers in certain categories then and compare it with now for the same kind of categories, etc. Um, I am more concerned about the delivery because you see, persons look at that number and I smile because, and I'm not saying that the politicians relative to other categories of workers don't get a lot of money, but I can tell you that private sector salaries, when you look, I served on the board of large corporation, commercial banks, and so on, and the salaries and bonuses that I saw in the private sector, um, you know, double and so on. So, but I think the important issue for me is that they are earning the salary that we are paying them, and that is the difficulty. Are they
Are they
justifying that
earning it?
salary? Are they earning? Are they doing the work? And perhaps it would be interesting to hear. Um, I would call on Thierry first because as a young man looking at this, because I have gone through the system, and some people may say I'm biased, but no, I think I have a longer perspective of and a wider perspective of salaries, private sector, public sector, and so I tell people I focus less. Not that I don't focus on it, because I've seen some increases that I don't understand to be justified. I mean, when I was a politician, we didn't get 3 weeks vacation. We got none. Those things have been introduced. I was not a member of parliament, but when I was a member of cabinet, my MP colleagues did not have that additional person to go to funerals and whatever else they're paid to do, and MPs did not sit on boards. So there's some governance issues that we can talk about that go beyond salary, but maybe Thierry can comment on.
Can,
Let me tell y'all a brilliant mind. Uh,
Yes.
and we will get to explore that one of these times. But I want to quickly comment on Mr. Abed's what appears to be a dilemma for him, and I would say that clearly the way in which unemployment is being calculated or monitored, is perhaps in need of a review. And even if those numbers are quote unquote correct, it is saying that people who are employed are perhaps not earning a living wage, a wage on which they can, a livable wage, a wage that allows them to live at some acceptable minimum. Because here he says he has never had so many requests with assistance for back to school, and that is a reality. I was leaving church this morning when one of my fellow congregants um, was walking back to her car and having spoken to another person, and she was in essence asking for some support for some parent who has, I think, 3 school-age children, and she was complaining that the person came to her late. And I have seen several entities doing the same thing. So what it really says to me is that a bald unemployment statistic, and as I said, one, I question whether the way of computing it reflects what is real, and two, if we take that number as real, whether or not people are earning a living wage. But I would also say this: am I moving around? The area in which there is activity is construction. But I will also say this: am I moving around? um, who I am seeing on construction sites are non-nationals, and more so, many of them are not CARICOM nationals. In fact, I right now I'm investigating something that was drawn to my attention, and I told the person before I speak about it, I will need to have certain bits of information. And I will say this though. Part of the concern that the person has is they're speaking about the conditions under which some of these workers are living. Two, the kind of pay that they're receiving, and the ability, because people are working here. Thierry spoke about remittances, I think, or getting people back home, or people going over a season and contributing from a distance.
Hopefully, you'll get a chance to come to the USA.
um,
Yeah.
the whole question of need, and as I was saying, my concern is that when we look at what's happening in Barbados, we have a number of unfortunate scenarios playing out. A failure to really pursue the creation of opportunities. Now, government can go so far, and let me say that there also has to be an interest in creating opportunities, innovating, call it whatever you want, creating job opportunities, investing, taking risk, and so on the part of the private sector. But of course, a private sector that imports and puts on a markup and is making a profit and doing okay, it's not going to get into risky activity. So government has to find a way to incentivize those groups of people or individuals who want to explore new and non-traditional ways. But I also want to talk about this question of people begging, because as the caller, the last two callers were speaking, I wrote, especially when the lady was speaking, I wrote down begging, one, out of laziness, or the willingness to participate in what I consider the mendicant mentality that has been fostered by politicians, particularly. I certainly would say, based on how I see things playing out, fostered but this government has encouraged that in a ways
Yes.
probably more
Yes.
significant than any other administration. Then, of course, this begging out of sheer necessity. People are knocking. I get calls. There's a young lady who I've been trying to find a job for. I don't know her personally. Somebody asked her to call me. And when she explained to me the kinds of jobs that she's done over the years in trying to survive and trying to find a job now, that, and she's not the only one. So I think that what's happening is that we are seeing a lot of wastage. We are seeing a lot of buzzwords knocking around, talking pretty fancy, consultants being paid money. I focus on them more than the politicians, although we can rightfully look at those people are receiving significant resources, and there's nothing to show for it. When I
Yes.
look, and somebody mentioned Barbados going back, and it's interesting to me. I hear Mr. Abed, and I guess he's also feeling it, not only in requests for support, but he probably is seeing it in terms of the level of
Sale.
business that
Yeah.
is happening. But I really am concerned when I look at the numbers of young people, and I've been trying to get some statistics, because I don't like to speak without facts. But I am concerned that year in and year out, we're seeing youngsters exiting our secondary school system at fifth form level. They are not going on to further education, tertiary education in the options. They're not finding jobs. And my question is, what is happening to them?